Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Heather. Thank you for joining me back at Heather's Crochet Corner. In this video, we're going to show you how to turn this rectangle into slippers. That's right, you can make slippers just like that. Alright. In today's tutorial, we're making slippers. For a while now, people have been asking me to share my pattern for slippers because the ones that I make remind them, I guess, a lot of what they used to get as gifts, I guess, from their grandparents or their grandmother. And they're pretty durable, unless you're my husband. Sorry, Jay, I know you're watching. In which case, I make them a bit more durable for him. I actually use a thicker yarn for his slippers. So there's that. But for the most part, I use a 4-weight. I use 2 strands of 4-weight. As you can see here, I've got 2 strands. What I'm using for this demonstration is the dark blue is Premier Basics. See there, it's a 4-weight. I believe the color is denim. Yep, denim. So that's the blue, and I'm using a white from Loops and Thread. And again, 4-weight. And so what I did want to point out is the fact that even though there are different brands of yarn and they are the same weight yarn, this is one exception where you can use 2 different brands of the same weight and not really have much of a discrepancy in how the yarn kind of reacts, as far as, you know, one being a little bit too thick, one being a little bit thinner. You're not going to notice a difference when you're making slippers. So let's carry on. Okay, as I mentioned, today's video is going to be about showing you my technique for making slippers using 2 strands of medium weight 4 yarn. It did take me quite a bit of time to work out the sizing because when I initially watched a video on how to make slippers, the person making them only used 1 strand, and while the project for me did work out size-wise, it actually felt more of like a sock than a slipper. And I thought, well, you know, why don't I just use 2 strands and see how that works out? And turns out it works absolutely fantastic. I couldn't be happier. But like I said, it took me time to work out the sizing. This is my holy grail of slipper notes. Yeah, I've got my little cheat sheet, so it just reminds me that I'm using 4-weight yarn. I'm using the Old Faithful number 5mm hook to make this happen. And so for my personal tension, this may vary for you. This is based on my tension, but what I've gathered is that for women's size slippers, the width from here to here, it's got to be 6.5 inches. It can be a little extra, but it's got to be at least 6.5. And for men's, which this one will happen to be, this is just a test in my husband's size. So he's a men's 11. So men's width is at least 8.5 inches. Again, you can get by a little bit wider and it wouldn't be a problem. So I will have notes on the screen to reference for later on. So, but for right now, because I'm working in a men's slipper down here, my notes say that the width, like I mentioned, has to be 8.5 inches wide. And if you want to add like a wide width, you can add an extra 2 rows to accommodate for that. And for the men's size 10 through 12, he's an 11. For me, I needed to chain 30. And then my note here, chain plus 2 to turn. So the relaxed length of my chain should be about 9.25 to 9.5 inches, which it was. So my slip knot is on this end here. That's my slip knot end. And when I measured it from here to here, it was within that 9 1/4 to 9 1/2 range. And what I did notice as to why it took me so long to figure out the sizing is that as you crochet, things tend to stretch. And so once you get a few rows in, you'll actually get your sort of finished length. So when you start off at 9 1/4 to 9 1/2 inches, you're going to end up to be about 11 to 11 1/4 inches, which is where I'm at. So right now, this is the size I need to be to finish this off. So what I'm going to do now is sort of show you how I got to this point. All right, we're ready to get started. I have my 2 strands of yarn. I'm working them together. So you just have to sort of just figure that you're working with one. So whatever you're doing with one, you're doing with both. And with most projects, you start with a slip knot. This is an important note. I will try to leave a little reminder in post in the video. Leave yourself a good sized, good length tail. This end here, your slip knot end, is what you're going to use to sew up the heel of your slipper. Let me see if I can get you a visual on that. So here is, let me put that down. Here's your slipper. Okay, here's your opening. Here's your toe end here all scrunched up. Here's your heel end. So when you fold the the rectangle, I'll show you that. You're taking your tail end where your slip knot is and you're sewing it up on this end. So you want to make sure you give yourself plenty of extra yarn to make sure you can secure that, because that's where your tail end is going, right at the center of that heel. Okay, so now that that's been disclaimed, give myself a long tail. Okay, and I make a slip knot. I know I show you guys frogs on a log. I don't actually use frogs on a log. So I just make my slip knot the way I make my slip knot. You make your slip knot the way you make your slip knot. No right or wrong. And so in order to, obviously slippers come in pairs, and you have to make 2 of the same size for the most part. So for making another for my husband and his size, I need to chain 30. And then my note says +2. So basically I'm chaining 32. So that's what I'm going to be doing. But I'll leave this here for a moment. If you are making a women's size in a 4 to a 6, this is shoe size, by the way. In like US or Canadian shoe sizing, not to be confused with, you know, UK, Japan, Australia. So whatever your shoe size is, the equivalent in the North American sizing, this is what I'm talking about. So if you're a women's size 4 to 6, you're going to want to start off chaining about 23. And it's not so much the chain number you need to concern yourself with. What's really important is the actual dimensions and the length. So just in the relaxed state, once you get your chain done, you should be about 6 inches in length. Because when you start to increase the rows, your length will increase by 2 and 2.5 inches, which will give you about 8 to 8.5 inches, which is the size you want for this size shoe. And if you are making a women's size about 6.5 to about 8.5, you're going to want to chain about 25. That's your starting point. And that should get you about 7 inches in the relaxed state after you've done your row of chains. And as you increase your rows, again, you're going to get about 2.5 inches. And you're going to be about 9 to 10 inches with it fully stretched. If you need to make a larger one for women's size, like 9 through 11, you're probably gonna start off chaining 27. So you're relaxed, you'll be about 8 inches. It's gonna increase 2 to 2.5. You'll be just over 10. That's your goal. And if you're making men's sizes, again, I'm working with the more common size, a 10 to 12. I'm going to start chaining 30 plus 2. And if you need to make anything larger, like a 12.5 to a 14.5 in men's, start off chaining 32, add 2 more. So it's just, you don't worry about the chaining because your tension might be different than mine. If you're using a slightly bigger hook than me, that's all going to vary just a little bit, but you want the actual overall sizing to be correct. So with women's width should be about 6.5 inches. And again, you can add 2 more rows to make it like a wide width if you want a little more space, depending on how you like your fit. If you like a little more snug, you might be okay with that 6.5 inches. But if you'd like a little bit of a looser feel, you might want to just add an extra row or 2. Men's, you're gonna want that width to be at 8.5 inches. And then again, if you want like a wider width, you can add 2 more. So hopefully this all makes sense. I will try to work it out with you in the comments, or if I happen to think of something while we do this. So let's get started here. Now that I've got to sort out my long tail and the actual working yarn and not confuse the two. There we go. So now that I've got my slip knot on, I need to start chaining 32. Well, 30 plus 2, I guess. So I will do that. So you're just making a chain. So you're just working 2 strands together as if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if you're making a smaller size, then chain whatever you think is appropriate for you. I need to do 30. I'm at 10. I will come back when I've got 30. Alright, I've got my 30. It looks like I am right on point with my measurements. I should be around 9.25 to 9.5 if you're following the same sizing that I am. This is a men's 10 to 12. So yeah, relaxed. It's about 9. I'm going to add 2 more for my turning chain. 1, 2. And when I do that, you can see it does stretch, and it's going to be right at about the 11 to 11.25. That will be the end. So when you're starting this project, it's going to be super handy to at least have a ruler or a measuring tape of some manner. You're going to want a yarn needle because you will be sewing in ends. Of course, a pair of scissors is going to be handy. And let's see, you're going to continue. So we've got all of my chains in. Just be careful you don't work in your super long tail. Keep that aside. And so this pattern or this project is meant for like advanced beginners or anybody that's comfortable making your slip knot. You've got your tension under control, and you're comfortable making single crochet stitches, because that's all we're using in this project. We're just single crocheting. For me, I'm going to go into the back bump of this. You can go into the second chain from the hook. Again, you don't want to go into that first chain because your working yarn is coming out of it. You're going to work into that second. If you want to, you can do back loop only. That would give it a little more stretch. You can work through the front loop and back loop. Or for me, I'm going to do the back bump. Either way, it doesn't matter. Matter of preference. So I'm going to work into the back bump. Make sure you catch both strands. You You can use whatever color you want. For me, it's just, I find that white does seem to contrast as blue. You can use whatever 2 strands of yarn your heart desires. It will not matter for this project. So I'm going to just single crochet in all of those back bumps. Feel free to, use your fingernails to make sure your hook can get into where it needs to. So plenty of yarn. For me, I've got both of my balls of yarn sort of tucked in on the couch to my left, because as a right-handed crocheter, my working yarn for me works better on the left side of me. But it's just a matter of preference. So I'm going to just single crochet, into the back bumps all the way down. Nothing fancy. And I will continue to do so all across the row, and I will come back when that's done. Alright, got my first row of single crochets done. I'm gonna turn my work as we do with just about every crochet project. Make sure you don't crochet in your tail. That comes later. And again, we're just using a single crochet throughout this whole project. I'm going to chain 1 because it's just a single crochet, not just the height of 1 single crochet. And I'm not going to go back into there. I'm going into the very next available stitch. And I'm just single crocheting like I did the first row. Just do it all over again. This is all we're doing until we get to the desired width. In this case, because it's a man size, I want 8.5 inches. Because we already have the desired length. So now we need to get to the proper width. And if you're making a women's size, again, that width for you would be 6.5 inches. You can add an extra row or 2 if you want like a wide width, if you prefer a looser fit. And for the men's, it's 8.5 inches with the same option of adding an extra row or 2 for the wide width. I'm not going to be too helpful with kid sizing, like little kid sizing. That's beyond my scope. I don't tend to dabble into smaller wearables or smaller projects that use anything smaller than like a 3mm hook or anything lighter than a 3 weight. My fingers just aren't that nimble, I guess. So I usually tend to work with a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6 weight yarn. And that seems to work best for me. You'd have to make your own adjustments for smaller things like booties. Alright, row 2, done. And we're doing the same thing. We're going to chain 1 to get that height of the next row. And we're just single crocheting down the entire row. And we're going to just repeat this over and over and over for several more rows until we get to the desired width, which in this case it's 8.5 inches. And what's great about this sort of project is that you can be a little off. It could be like, 8 3/4 inches. It could be, 8 1/4 inches, and it's going to have stretch. And it'll have a bit more stretch if you were just working back loop only throughout the whole thing. I'm working through both, front and back. Make sure you're catching both strands, by the way. If that wasn't already like a given, make sure you're catching both strands. That's why I opt to use two different colors. I mean, you can use two of the same, but for me, knowing that I've got two different colors, I can see them clearly. And if I've missed a loop, if I've missed a stitch, it's going to be pretty obvious. If you go with two of the same, it might be a little harder to detect. But again, it's preference. They're your slippers. You make them in any color you feel you want them. And let's see, I think once I get finished with this row here, I will just get back to the demo already made, and I will show you how to close it off, or I guess finish off the slipper. All right, so that's the end of that row. Let's see where we're at size-wise. We know we got the right length. We're about 1 inch, so still quite a ways off, but it's a single crochet. It'll work up real easy. I'm going to just swap this out, get the demo back into frame, and show you how to turn the rectangle into a functional slipper. Alright, back with the already done size. Again, we'll confirm our sizing. We should be about 11 to 11.25 inches for the actual length. And we definitely have met the mark. It's fine that's a little bit over, and I'll show you that. It'll all make sense. And as far as the width, it says we're about, I don't know, 7 3/4, but really, if you do give it a little stretch, you will see it'll actually be pretty darn perfect, because we had a little bit too much length and not enough width. And there's your 11. Here's your 8 1/4, 8 1/2. See? It's all good. So what's really important, the biggest tip I have for you making slippers is, here's my starting slip knot end, where I said to make sure you leave yourself a little bit of a length, preferably, obviously I've been doing it so I know to leave a good amount. You'll thank yourself later. The opposite end, so when you're finishing off and you feel like you've got to the right width of your project, even if you have to add an extra row, make sure your finished end is opposite of your slip knot. This will make your life so much easier. You'll see why. And when you are happy with the width, you have to make yourself a long tail, seriously long tail, like 7 widths. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, I missed it, 5, okay, this is almost 6. Yes, it needs to be that long for a reason. We'll work with the short end. So as you can see, to me, I don't see a right side or a wrong side. To me, both sides look very similar. If you happen to have made a mistake in your work anywhere that you notice, your best bet is to make that the inside of the slipper. No one's ever going to see it. No one will ever know. All right, so the trick to making this rectangle into a slipper shape is basically you are folding it up like a taco. Okay, you're folding it like a taco. Don't worry about this long end here, where this will be the toe end. You're concerned about the heel end, which is the slip knot side, okay? So what you're going to need to do now, match up your 2 yarn strands. You're going to put them through yarn needle. Make sure it can accommodate both strands of yarn. And you're going to match up. Here's your slip knot end here. We're going to go right into that very top stitch on the opposite side. And we're going to sew down. I'm gonna go each stitch down. So just matching stitch per stitch on the opposite side, back and forth, all the way down, keeping your edges even. It's okay if you left a bit longer of a tail. In this particular project, it's better to have too much to work with than not enough. Okay, we're getting down to the very bottom here. Okay, so here is what's going to be your heel. Your heel will go here. You can give it a tug to see if maybe you've missed a section. You can always go back through. I do like to leave a lot, and what I like to tend to do is once I get to the heel part, I like to kind of go back through and even catching some of the spaces just to reinforce that heel a bit. And don't worry about anything like that, because you can always turn it inside out and no one's going to see it. But you can be a bit neater about it if you want. If you're using the same color of yarn, it'll be a lot easier to hide your mistakes or hide any imperfections. Okay, so you've gone down, you've gone back up. You can give it a tug. There's no gaps, there's no holes. That's pretty secure. I'm going to just, for now, leave that just like that for now. And now we need to work on what will be the toe end. All right, so the toe end, you might feel like one side feels a bit tighter, one side feels a bit looser. Perfectly normal, no big deal. So we want to unravel this so it's easy to work with. Go, get those nice and even there. Same thing, you want to get your yarn needle, put those strands through. This is a little different technique than what we just did with the toes. We are still going to go across like we did. So here's where your work ends. You want to go directly across. And yeah, I know you're gonna be pulling through quite a bit. Just try to keep it organized as best you can. Okay. And here we're going to, you've got a bit of a circle here. This is your toe end. All right, we're going to be going sort of in and out. Okay, see how I went in and out there? Just going into the next stitch, sort of skipping this one, but kind of going into that one. And then sort of just going in and out. So now I'm inside, I'm going outside. And I'm going to pull my yarn, making sure it doesn't get tangled on the other end. And if you guys know of an easier way to do this, by all means, share in the comments. Even get a couple of stitches in there if you want. Just make sure your yarn doesn't get tangled as you pull it through. And we're just working the in and out stitches all the way around what will be the toe of your slipper. Okay, and going out, oops, going in, going out. You want to make sure that you're catching just the last bit. So you don't want to go too deep into it, like down here. You want to stay like right at the edge, because what essentially will be happening is when you get back to the top part where you started, we're going to give this a nice pull, and it's going to scrunch. It's going to make the toe section. There we go. Got an issue with my blue yarn here. What's going on with that? No, it's not good. Oh, it's good. Here we go. Crisis averted. Alright, let's give it a tug. And I'm going in and back out. Pulling all of that. There is a method to the madness, I assure you. It'll all make sense. Gotta trust the process. Okay, now I'm back where I started. I'm going to just feed that right into that first top stitch where we started. Oh, make sure you don't catch it on the bottom of the toe there. Okay. And now this is where you create your toe. You just give it a nice pull. You want to feed that into the opposite side there. Here we go. Oops. Alright, and we're scrunching just to pull it. Give it a nice yank. That should close that right up and scrunch it down. Okay. And what I like to do is once you've got it scrunched, is just sort of go through just a few times just to secure that. So you definitely want to use a nice sturdy yarn needle. Sometimes the plastic ones may give you a hard time getting through all those layers. It is doable though, I've done it. Just trying to save you guys the hassle. Yeah, just, it doesn't matter where you go, just as long as you kind of get into like the meaty part of it here, just to make sure that what you did scrunch closed continues and remains to be scrunched closed. There we go. I'll just give that a little tug. There we go. And you can kind of just sort of hide the rest of it. Get back into as close as you can to that first stitch there that's open and available. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, just be careful because this happens. Your yarn does tend to want to get all knotted even though you've made several attempts to make sure that doesn't happen. It happens. Alright, I will fiddle with this off camera and I will come back. Alright, crisis averted. We got it all sorted out here. That tends to happen in this project because you got such long tails to work with. I guess it's just important to know, just be patient. If you have to undo the last stitch to make it easier to unravel, because sometimes the yarn just sort of twists on itself, then just pull out the last stitch. No big deal. Alright, back to this. We've scrunched our toes. It's nice and sturdy. They're staying scrunched. I've got the yarn back up top, so we've folded it like a taco. We've sewed in and we've created the heel, and we just finished creating what will be the toe end of our slipper. Now we have to sort of close off the top of the slipper. Okay, so usually it's about 5 inches, 5.5 inches. If you have like an old pair of slippers or even your own shoes, if you're making for yourself, just measure the top to where your foot goes into. So from the toe itself, it's about 5.5 So if you put the 5.5 mark at the closed toe end, you kind of want to get to about here-ish, so about halfway. Remember, this is a man's slipper. The foot's going to be a bit larger. They're going to need a little bit more space to get their feet in there. And you can always add more stitches. So what I'm going to do is I tend to whip stitch, which I will demonstrate. I mean, you can certainly close this in any fashion you wish. If you are an avid sewer and you've got other means of closing it, by all means do that. I am not, so whip stitching works for me. And whip stitching basically is you're putting your needle through the opposite side, and yes, you're pulling all the tail with you, making sure it doesn't get knotted, tangled, and you're just sort of allowing the yarn to go over top, and then you're getting the next set of stitches like that. Make sure you don't get caught. There you go. And the next one, you're just catching every stitch along the top to a certain point. Obviously don't close it all the way up, because that wouldn't be a slipper. It'd be non-functioning. So funny story to share while we're sewing up the top of our slippers here. When I first started to crochet, and I think what happens to most of us, I think we all kind of start off making square things, rectangular things, because the idea of, making any kind of wearable where sizing specific items are required probably seems very intimidating to a lot of us. I thought, how hard could it be? How hard could it be? I attempted, because I at the time was not able to read patterns. The abbreviations were all very, very foreign to me, as I'm sure it is for a lot of you at this point. I thought, well, I could just wing it, right? I can wing it. And I was making a pair of slippers for my husband, and what they ended up looking like was a diving flipper. It was that square, it was that boxy, and he still jokes about his flipper slipper. I did not make a second one to match, because there was no way I was going to allow him to wear something so hideous that I made. And I think I, at that point, started going through other YouTube tutorials to find out how to make slippers, because people kept asking for them, because his grandmother used to knit slippers, and every year for Christmas she'd make everybody slippers. And when she passed, she kind of, took that with her. She never showed anybody how to create them. So it was kind of a big deal for me when I learned to crochet slippers, because now there's somebody that can carry on that tradition in the family. So that's nice. Anyway, we're going to continue to whip stitch and not tangle our ends. Go. And I'm sure you could just easily crochet them, I suppose. Crochet it closed. You could probably slip stitch it closed. And I hadn't actually thought to do that until now. But this is how I've always done it. I'm sure there are alternative ways, but since I don't know of any, I can only show you what I know. And let's see, after here, let me just see where I'm at. I don't want to close it up too much because then he won't be able to get his foot into it. Let's see. So that's pretty much it, right? So you got your toe end here. Let's see. About 5. I think I'm gonna go maybe one more. Make sure I'm in frame there. One more, and I'm gonna show you what I do with the rest of this tail, because I know you're thinking, Jesus, you know, that's an awful lot of yarn and you didn't even use up half of it. Oh, but I will. Oh, but I will. So yes, you could technically fasten off at this point, find a means of tying this off and closing it, you know, permanently, and then weaving in this little tail here, you know, and you'd be done. But what I like to do, completely optional, but I'd rather show you while I have a chance than tell you about it, is yes, take your crochet hook and put it into the first stitch of your, I guess it's a cuff, I'm not really sure, whatever this part of the slipper is, that's what you're I'm going to just single crochet. I'm going to add a bit of height so it sits just above the ankle instead of below the ankle. And you can make this as tall as you want, but I'm just going to put one single crochet all the way around and hope I've given myself enough length to do what I need to do. Okay, we're coming up on this tail here. The idea behind leaving it is I'm going to crochet it in. So I'm going to just hold it and crochet over it. So then I don't have to sew it in. Oops, I pulled back too far. That's okay, we'll just pick up where we left off. There's no shame in having to weave it in if you want to. Getting stuck here. One of these strands doesn't want to cooperate. Go, just sort of tuck in that little straggler there. There we go, that's the part. There we go. And just continue on picking up the next stitch, hiding in that tail. Oh, I think I left myself plenty. Good, that should be fine there. I don't have to do the whole tail. I can probably just, that should be plenty. I should be able just to sort of snip that off. Oops, I think I missed that one there. And just make sure you're grabbing both strands and you're pushing your hook through both strands. That one doesn't feel right. Alright, and we're getting close to where we've started, or I guess we're finished the toe section here. So yeah, it's actually looking like a slipper. What do you know? Alright, so I'm going to slip stitch this. I'm going to put it into the opposite side. Okay, I'm going to pull it through. Make sure I pull both strands. That's super important. Pull both strands through. Pull both strands through. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to grab my yarn needle and pull those together. I'm going to just hide it in where we whip stitched. Okay, go up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay. There we go. And we're going to just take our scissors. We're going to just snip that there. We can probably snip that here. And if you don't like the edging here, or you don't want to see the whip stitching here, you just turn it inside out. Go. So there you go. There's your slipper. Pretty nifty. Now you got to make the other side. Alright, well I hope that this helps you. I hope you've enjoyed making this along with me. Feel free to, you should have the option on your YouTube page to save this video. And you can just save it for future reference. So if you're not able to make this, now, you can certainly save it and refer to it later on. But these are great gifts as far as the popularity. Very popular. This is my #1 selling item at Heather's Crochet Corner. I've sold more pairs of slippers than anything. So once you can get this, you can see how much stretch this is. So that's why it fits from a 10 to a 12 in men's. So it might be a little loose for the guy that wears a size 10. It may be a little snug for the guy that wears a size 12. But, it's a great, very durable. The fact that you're using 2 strands of 4 weight make it very durable. I've got a few people that I've made them for that haven't asked for a new pair, and for a while I thought, oh geez, are they made poorly? Are they just too afraid to say something, or do they not want to hurt my feelings? And I finally did inquire, and oh no, that's not the case at all. It's like they're great. They're so durable that they actually last a few years or more, and they haven't had to. It's just with my husband, he has a very weird foot thing as far as the way he stands and wears through his shoes. He seriously goes through shoes every 6 months. So I was going through these probably, I think I was making 2 or 3 pairs in one fall winter season, because he only wears them from maybe, I don't know, October until about April. And I would seriously make 2 to 3 pairs of these for him because he would wear through the bottom. He also paces quite a bit. So I've moved on to using a size 6 in 2 different strands to make his slippers. These tend to, I think I make 2 a year for him, and he manages to make those last, so they do last a bit longer for him than the typical 4 weight. But these are really soft, and the making it in a 6 is doable. You are going to have to adjust. I mean, the sizing will be the same, but if you are going by like how many chains to start off with, you will have to adjust that number, because I would need, I think 30 chains for this, plus the 2. And this, I only need 25. Same size hook. It's harder to work with when you got 2 big strands. But anyway, I'm rambling, I am yammering, and I will share the information. I have information again. I will share a copy of my notes for all of you, which is like my cheat sheet. And I also have, right here, I have made a note on men's, women's sizing, and because sometimes they're the same. So, for example, a women's size like 7.5 to 8 is the same size as a men's 6 or 6.5, which is probably more like a kid size, not toddler kid, but like younger kid. Like, I guess they consider like boy sizing at that point. Most men's size shoes start at like a, I don't know, like a 7 or an 8, I think. So it just gives you the actual length in inches. I will see about posting this as well, so that you guys can refer to that. And so with that being said, I hope that you had a good time making this project. I hope you make this for somebody. I would love to see photos of this if you follow me on Facebook. If you have any questions at all, please comment on the YouTube comment section, or if you follow me on Heather's Crochet Corner on Facebook, you can leave a comment for me there, and I'll do my very best to answer that for you. So I appreciate you joining me. I hope you come back for the next video. Thank you so much.